This is Unread Emails, the last scene of the second to last episode of Sora Yori mo Tooi Basho, or in English, A Place Further Than the Universe. And it's my favorite scene in anime. Unlike my other favorites, such as the Sea King confrontation in One Punch Man, We See You Menma, the lake scene in Violet Evergarden, or that scene from Eva, where those scenes rely on a large explosion of emotion, Unread Emails is more subtle in how it deals with its emotion, since at first glance it might seem like it's the same thing, being just an intense outpouring of emotion and crying as a climax to the series, but it actually works a little different. The scene is more akin to an emotional implosion when taken in context of the entire series, and how it does that makes the scene so much more impactful and effective. So let's talk about it. Obvious spoilers for A Place Further Than the Universe. So in case anybody here hasn't seen the show and is ignoring the fact that the show is absolutely amazing and you should totally watch it, I'll give a bit of a recap about it and give the information that is pertinent to the scene, because there is something here for both people that have seen the show and those who haven't to learn. So this is Shirase Kabuchizawa, and she's sort of the emotional core of the show. While there are 3 other girls that she goes to the Antarctic with, and even though she isn't even arguably the main character, Himari is, she is still the entire reason the show happens, and the entire reason that 4 high school girls end up going to Antarctica. See, 3 years prior, Shirase's mother went on an expedition to the Antarctic with the same team that Shirase and her team is going with, and during that expedition, she disappeared. A whiteout blizzard came at an inopportune time, Takako got separated from the pack, and she presumably froze to death under the stars, to which her last words over the radio were, Each of the 4 high school girls have their own reasons for going to the Antarctic, both stated and not, but Shirase's is the most emotionally complex. Compared to Himari's I want to get the most out of my youth, and Hinata's I want to prove my asshole high school teammates wrong, to Yuzuki's my mom forced me to be here and now I'm just here to make friends, Shirase's reasons go pretty much unstated for the entire show, but with the help of really effective emotional storytelling and the use of flashbacks, we can discern the true reason eventually. What Shirase says when asked the question why is that she wants to go because that's where her mother went missing, which is a perfectly valid answer, but it's missing a level of depth that the show heavily implies is actually there, but we're just not getting, since all of the other girls have some sort of further, more thorough mission that they want to accomplish on their trip. To make the most out of their youth, to prove people wrong, to make friends. But Shirase saying, I'm going because this is where my mom was, doesn't have any of that extra depth. If you were to get really close to Shirase, however, like her 3 friends do in the show, and then ask her, she would probably say something along the lines of, I want to go find my mother, which is getting more at the true reason behind Shirase's wanting to go. A major theme in this show is grief, and more importantly, denial. Believing that your loved one, by some means, is still alive and is out there. And this theme comes out in full force when we get pretty much any scene with Shirase, because throughout the entire show, we never hear about how the trip is about doing something for her personal fulfillment. Instead, it's always relating back to her mother in some way. And Shirase always talks in this sort of black and white, both with an acceptance that she'll never see her mother again, but also with a denial that she is dead unless she sees evidence of it. It litters pretty much every single one of her lines when she talks about her mother. What this does in turn is impart that denial onto the 3 other girls, so that the concept of Takako still being alive purely from the fact that her body was never found is strengthened fourfold, increasing that sense of denial and a search for answers, and, for the 3 other girls, to find a way for their friend to grieve her mother's death once and for all. But what this does is something much more fascinating, because the show does something else that I absolutely adore. It imparts that feeling of denial onto the viewer as well. When watching the show, after you've seen the scene where Takako gets lost in the blizzard, your logical self tells you that, yeah, Takako is dead as hell and there is no way she survived that. But because you have such a strong emotional connection to Shirase and the other 3 girls, you buy into their denial and you desperately do not want Takako's death to be the truth. You, as well as everybody on the screen, really want Takako to be alive and still kicking somewhere, somehow. And here's where the idea of an emotional implosion comes into play, because at this point in the show, you have bought into this denial so hard yourself that come episode 12, you are at a level of emotional suspense that is ready to be resolved. And you know that somehow Shirase is going to learn that her mother is dead. How else is the show going to wrap up its emotional themes? And when Yuzuki shouts out that she found something and we see the laptop, we see how that's going to work. Enter the actual scene that is at the center of our video in this discussion, where Shirase is opening her mother's laptop that had been stuck in a box in an Arctic base that had been abandoned for 3 years, and she guesses the password, and it starts gathering emails, and we see that every single email Shirase had sent from the day her mother died to the most recent one, all 1,100 something of them had gone completely unread, which is something that we understand is not something Takako would ever do unless she was dead. Denial, 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 boom, acceptance. She's dead. She has been for 3 years. Shirase feels it, the girls outside the room feel it, you feel it. It's an implosion because denial had been holding Shirase together this entire time. But when she is faced with undeniable proof right in front of her eyes, she, and by extension you, emotionally break. This entire scene is performed by Kana Hanazawa, who does an incredible job at voicing Shirase's absolute desperation and emotional break, which makes watching the scene that much harder. But I think my favorite extra little thing that the scene does is the insert song that plays in the background and how much that adds to the text. The song is called Matane, performed and written by Yoshiaki Fujisawa, which translates extremely literally to something around the likes of again, okay? Which is used in Japanese as a farewell with very casual implications of seeing that person again soon. The chorus of the song, which is just absolutely gorgeous and emotionally impactful in its own right, both in lyrics and in melody, even if you don't speak Japanese, kicks in right as the email from Shirase start flooding in, which never fails to make me want to cry. But, as you might have guessed, I do not speak Japanese, so the meaning of the song was largely lost on me until I actually looked up the translation, and my god does it make it so much better. So the song is actually really short, lyrics-wise. It's just 5 stanzas, the first of which just describes being in the Arctic, saying it's cold and whatnot. And the second of which also starts off describing the Arctic, but it eventually begins to develop these descriptions of the snow and cold into a metaphor for a journey. The footprints behind us have disappeared. The days that I thought would be endless are now over. Which is to say that the narrator of the song is saying that they have reached the end of the journey that seemed like would have been endless, and now they are looking back at how far they have come, and they can't even see how they ended up there. It's just been that long of a journey. Then the first chorus comes in as the emails flood in, and the song starts singing about how feelings are more important than words, and then comes the promise that we'll go on another journey someday. If you haven't gathered it by now, the song in this moment is heavily implied to be Shirase singing to her mother, which becomes incredibly clear with the last stanza where she says, "The time we spent together is irreplaceable. I hope that it will reach you forever and ever, we'll meet again." Shirase is telling her mother that they will meet again at some point, and that the time that they had together, however brief, was irreplaceable, and she realizes that now. Granted, the line "Kitto tsunaide kureru" probably does not mean "I hope that it will reach you," but that's the best translation I can give, since "is what I'm trying to express" feels super clunky and isn't what I'm gathering from how it's structured, so yeah, whatever. But what's even cooler, I think, is what this show does with the idea of a place further than the universe. That name is something people genuinely call Antarctica. Hell, whenever I type that into my phone, it recommends me the quote-unquote flag for Antarctica. It's a very widely accepted metaphorical name for the Antarctic, but it can also be used to describe something else. Heaven. A place beyond the universe, where in the song, Shirase talks about seeing her mother again, because during the scene, she's accepting that this place further than the universe, the one that she is in currently now, is not where she is going to see Takako again. It's the other one, the one in the sky beyond the stars, literally. And when you factor in the fact that the song is called Matane, which is a farewell that strongly implies seeing the other person again soon, the song is pretty much singing about Shirase's realization in this moment that the only time she will be reunited with her mother is in death, that the only time they'll be together again is in heaven, which I think is super neat, using that double meaning of a place further than the universe. Forever and ever, forever and ever, matane. We'll meet again one day in death. Goodbye for now. Thanks for watching.